I've had my Bronco for almost 2 years now, and a lot has changed since the day I picked it up. I've had a couple different tires, a couple different tents, even a couple different lift kits. But I am super happy with how it is set up right now and don't see the need to change much in the future. With that said, here's my entire 2-year Bronco build in 10 minutes. In November of 2022, I picked up a 2022 Ford Bronco Badlands with a Sasquatch package after someone backed out of their order. I took it out in stock form to see what I was going to prioritize or what it even needed. A rack was first on my list, but while I waited for them to come back in stock, I decided to be dumb and get an exhaust and intake for the Bronco. So I picked up a Corsa Sport exhaust and a Mashimoto cold air intake. The Corsa system is 14 pounds lighter than the OEM system. But the biggest difference is where that weight is. The OEM muffler is extremely heavy, and that's all hanging off like behind the rear axle. With the Corsa system, it shifts that weight more central in the vehicle. A couple weeks later, my TrailRax tremor rack with pack racks finally arrived, and I wasted no time getting it on the Bronco. For a while, I was running the iKamper SkyCamp 2.0, but eventually I switched to the iKamper BDV Duo. I loved this tent, and it was my first experience with a wedge-style tent, but it was a bit heavy, so I recently switched to the iKamper SkyCamp 3.0 DLX. I've had a couple different tires as well. The first set were Falcon RT01s, which I really liked, but they were a very harsh ride. So I switched to the Nitto Ridge Grapplers, and while they still have a hard ride, they're a little bit kinder than the Falcons in my experience. Next up were rock sliders. I ran the stock guards for a long time, which are great for clearance, but I wanted something with a little bit more protection that also acted as a step. So I picked up the RCI rock sliders with a 5-degree bend and a kickout. the stock tie rods and steering rack are a weak point of the Bronco, I decided it was time for an upgrade. So I got the 74 weld stage 1 end cap with Icon tie rods. I've switched tie rods a couple times since then. I did not like the Icon tie rods, I didn't like the rough country tie rods, so now I have RPG tie rods with Heim joints. So, factory steering end cap, and then this is the 74 weld end cap. In my opinion, the stock headlights in the Bronco were insufficient. So when Form Lighting reached out and wanted me to test their headlights, I jumped on it, and they are a vast improvement over stock. Go. I had the hardest time finding a bumper that I liked, but eventually I found the Warn Elite bumper. I also paired that with a Warn VR Evo 10S winch. It was finally time for suspension and 37-inch tires. I was lucky enough to work with Dobinsons for this, so I got to test out two of their kits, the Dobinson IMS kit and the MRR kit. If I were buying, I would jump straight to the MRR. I also switched to the adjustable trailing arms and panhard bar from Dobinsons. I decided to get new wheels just to switch up the look of the Bronco at the same time. So I went with the Impact Off-Road 881 wheels and a 17x9, and then wrapped that in 37x12.5 Nitto Ridge grapplers. And that takes us to where the Bronco sits today. I know this was a 10-minute video, but it took 2 years to get to where you see it. Each mod, except for maybe the exhaust and intake, I established a need before putting it on the Bronco. I encourage you to get out, test your rig, and figure out what works for you. Do not order parts just because social media tells you that's what you need. My rig works for me, but it may not be your solution. So get off the grind, test it out, and I will see you in the next one.